Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Tom Mulkern, and I am going to represent Innerspace. Let's click this. So first, I'm going to introduce our group comprised of 6 members, each of which wore different hats, but with a primary role. We have Vera Chichan on tools and also documentation. We have Oscar Guzman and Prabjot Singh with QA, and they performed unit testing and setup. Philip Kim as Scrum Master and did a lot of work on the database and backend. And Joel Newish as our senior developer, using his experience to help build our front end and APIs. And myself, Tom Mulkern, acting as project lead and working with graphics. So what is Innerspace? When COVID-19 showed up, it did more than just impede everyone's ability to live normally as they did before. It also impeded parents, teachers, and professionals from helping children who already had problems before the outbreak. Many children that have development issues or are on the autism spectrum have trouble communicating and expressing themselves effectively. Without developing these skills, it becomes more difficult for them to become independent as they grow up. So that's where Innerspace comes in. It is an online platform that enables parents, teachers, and professionals to create behavioral modules for their students to interact with. These modules can not only provide an outlet for a child to better engage in self-expression and communication, but also to record that data so that trends in their emotions and activity can be identified to better help their learning outcomes. So what makes it so special? And how does it stand apart from other tools? Well, this one is designed with the idea of becoming an open platform accessible to a large community. Other products on the market either come with expensive hardware or are expensive software in their own right. And many of the ones that have a curriculum that is targeted toward different disabilities and behaviors, they are not so customizable or able to be tailored to specific cases. Innerspace is designed to be a platform where modules can be custom made to focus on specific cases and shared. So how is it used? By allowing students to check in and report their emotions, teachers can monitor how often students report and what kind of patterns they have in their emotions. This can be particularly useful when paired with days that children get one-on-one interactions with professionals to gauge how children feel about particular programs they went through that day. Students log in and see what daily tasks are available to them. At the moment, there's a default emotion check-in module. A student will be presented with several emotions they may be feeling, and when selected, we'll see a further breakdown of those emotions. Once they select the one that identify with at that moment, they can submit it and are presented with a gold star for completion. For a teacher, when they log in, they'll be presented with a list of students. When they select one, they'll be able to view their check-in history, including their most recent login, and different charts depicting which emotions they experience. Now we'll demonstrate a brief demo. Let me know if you can hear the audio.
I'm not hearing any audio.
I understand. Let me narrate this. Hello, so this is our demo. First, we're going to demonstrate the experience that a teacher will have. We'll use Kevin Chaya's login and password, which is definitely not password. We bypass the CAPTCHA, verifying we're human, and we can see all the students that he has. Let's look at my record. First, we're going to click on that, and then we're going to be able to see how recently I have logged in and what type of emotions are available. This first table is rather noisy and not that easy to interpret. So we can look at the line chart, which is a lot more informative per the days. Let us note Friday, where I was angry twice. We're also going to look at a radar chart and a bar chart. The radar chart, when it's sparse, isn't as informative, but the bar chart lets us identify each individual emotion. As you can tell, I'm never sad. Now we're going to log in as Tom Mulkern. And we're going to see what a student sees. We're going to see the default daily check-in. We're going to start that. And when we do, we're going to be presented with the different emotions. Still feeling angry. I stubbed my toe. We're going to go look at anger. We have 3D models that were a stretch goal we're happy to get them running. But in the future, we will move from FXB models to faster loading models. I'm very upset that I stubbed my toe. And I want to know which one do I identify with in that type of anger. I really curse and yell at things. So I lash out. Let's see if... I also feel bad that I'm clumsy. So I have an internal anger. We're going to submit this and I'll be presented with a gold star. I'm going to feel very happy about this and it'll give me incentive to log in at later times. Now we're going to log out and log back into the teacher, Kevin Chaya, to see if there was any change in the data and how that can be viewed. So once again, we go to login, teacher, Kevin Chaya, password, and CAPTCHA. We can see that Thomas Mulkern was last online a few seconds ago. So now we could go in there to view the difference. If you're quick, you'll notice anger incremented. But if we go to the line chart, we can see now there's 3 instances. And there's also one at 11:41 a.m., which was the time of this recording. With that, that concludes our demo. And now we will move on to the next slides. So now that we've shown you how it is built or how it performs, we're going to discuss how we built it, what our process was, what technologies we used, and why we were, and where we see it going. During this course, we attempted to implement an agile workflow. The project evolved over many sprints, with the requirements slowly changing based on our previous results or new stakeholder input. Our professor acted as our stakeholder, someone who held us accountable to meet specific goals and provided new input that would cause us to pivot on certain topics. To succeed in this process, we were vigilant in our requirements elicitation and breakdown of tasks. Once broken down, our tasks were organized based on priority and assigned or volunteered upon by our group members. Phil, as our Scrum Master, took note of who was working on what and keeping track of blockers and progress. Whenever an issue arose, we discussed it as a group in order to decide how best to move forward. Joel provided valuable experience as he was very familiar with how React projects are structured. For our tools and technologies, Innerspace was built on the Next.js platform, which leverages React to render web pages, and Node.js for backend and API services. We used MongoDB as our database, a cost-effective, scalable NoSQL database that was well suited to our unstructured data. For deploying the web server, we used DigitalOcean, a cloud service that allows scalable server that adjusts to traffic. It also has good uptime. In order to keep track of different sections of code being worked on simultaneously and across several iterations, we used GitLab. Let's explore some of the architecture we had for our database. We designed this with the goal of being secure and scalable. By using MongoDB, we have access to an auto-scaling database service. Our web server interacts with Mongo's servers. And when it queries the database, the database is stored in partitions across several servers. In case anyone fails, the data is still preserved. For the web server itself, we had used DigitalOcean for testing purposes due to its ability to auto-balance its servers to meet varying demand and for its uptime. One of the requirements we wanted to satisfy with this application was securing the data. Since our application involves interaction with children and can contain sensitive information, security was a high priority. For our data, we took advantage of MongoDB's encryption at rest. Anything stored in the database is encrypted. There are encryption keys used to decrypt the data, and those themselves are stored in the database, but they are also encrypted, requiring a master key, which is never kept on the database, but kept with user credentials separately. For login, we used Google's reCAPTCHA to help ensure malicious programs or routines were not able to access our customers' data. To ensure we met our requirements, we had to first establish what they were. These were written down using Jira. We had scrims for each sprint, and here's a few examples of some of the task breakdowns we had for those sprints. We also made use of unit testing to verify that each new component added sat well with the rest of the project. So where do we see Innerspace heading? Innerspace, as it stands, is a functioning application with a simple emotion check-in module that exports data for teachers or parents to make use of. We would like to open up a path for teachers and parents to create their own modules for students to interact with. These modules can be professionally curated and shared, tailored to specific needs. A robust platform where parents that would not be able to afford the resources or have direct access to professionals can take advantage of professionally built modules aimed at helping students that have the same challenges as their child. To recap, Innerspace is a solution for parents, teachers, and professionals as they strive to help special needs children during a year when face-to-face interaction is not feasible. Our product excels at providing data to the teachers to better help them measure a student's progress and activity so that they can tailor their lessons to their students' success. We hope that this platform can grow in the future where professionally made learning modules are shared and curated for others to use. Thank you for listening, and are there any questions?
How would someone go about, a teacher, say, for example, go about creating do they create their own module, or do they need to work with a developer of some sort to create a new module?
Great question. In this first phase, we have a default module. In the next phase, we aim to create a module creation tool. Our first goal was to make basically a quiz generator. So a teacher would be able to interface with this small application to create quizzes. And obviously professionals would understand what kind of questions to ask these children that have these issues to actually get good results. And so we'd want to put that tool in their hands. But to shortly answer your question, we want to make it as easy for the teachers to do this independently and on their own.
I'll throw a question of my own in there. So how overall, how were requirements gathered for the project? Because it seems like like in particular in normal use, there would be potentially a lot of people involved where you have teachers, you have counselors, you have the actual people themselves. How was that information gathered in terms of like who needs what?
Well, how we decided on these requirements was basically asking our professor grilling questions, but more specific to the project and how customers provide information. This isn't necessarily a tool that we provide for the children. It's a tool we provide for the parents and the teachers. And those teachers and parents are going to be able to provide their child's information and make sure it's secure. Yeah, that's essentially it. The teachers and parents would provide the information and we'll secure it.
Thank you.
How easy is it to add a new category or a new emotion to this thing, like excitement or something, or nervousness?
That's, it's so funny. We didn't think about it until 2 weeks ago that stress is not an emotion that's present here, but it's certainly one that all of us on the team have been feeling a lot. The way our React page is generated is it pulls from a list of emotions. And then it also finds those models in the database to prefetch them into the server and load them that way. So to add a new emotion, all we really need to do is add to that list in the database and add models. And then it should automatically populate in the emotions check-in. We have the UI laid out as it is, but it should be scalable and adjust to more emotions as they're listed.
Okay, thanks.
Used a lot of industry standard architecture pieces, with the database and the scaling and all that. Was that something that was a requirement, from your advisor, or did someone in the team have some experience with that already? Or I'm just curious how you arrived at that. Yeah.
Two instances of the later. We are Joel acts as our senior developer, and he does have a job in the industry working in web development. But as far as the scalability, I have my AWS certificate from my community college. And so whenever I address these projects, I want to see, how can it scale? And I wanted to leverage some of the classes I've taken. So that was something we wanted to pivot towards. I know you didn't quite ask this, but what I want to mention is that we didn't necessarily satisfy what Professor Chai asked us to do. It would have been simple for us to just recreate the emotion check-in. What we wanted to do is create a platform so that other people can have their modules on it. And when we look at something like Color My Moment, we see that does a really good job of gathering information from a student. And that type of module will actually fit really well in our platform.
Great, thanks.
There's a question from the audience that I'll go ahead and read out. So did you ever consider that this could be used in hospitals for their pediatric population? I think the emotion tracking graph is very clear and an intuitive way to visualize emotional trends of patients. So have you given that any thought of hospitals?
No, I haven't considered that. And I could actually see how that would be incredibly valuable. Instead of having to go from patient to patient and kind of quiz them through all this, they'd be able to check in remotely if they have like a phone accessible to them at their bedside. That's fantastic. I hadn't even thought of that. That means that medical professionals could use this and create their own modules. But on that note, one thing I didn't mention, we are sensitive to the data that we're collecting and using. And we are COPA compliant. We have a privacy policy on our website for that.
Yeah, it seems like maybe the two of you should chat offline I'm assuming you can see the question in the...
I'll stop sharing because it's in full screen. If I pull out of this, I'll be able to see chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it seems like the two of you might want to chat offline because there's a potentially cool application there. All right, with that, that is the end of the Q&A time. So let's go ahead and give one last thanks to the Innerspace group